Hey guys, you know that softboxes are like maybe the most popular type of modifier for portrait photographers, at least. You know, as far as a key light goes. If you're considering using a softbox, maybe you've never used one before, maybe you haven't invested in one, but if you're considering getting one, I've got some thoughts on what you should look for and what you should try to avoid when considering a softbox. Now, I've used many different types of softboxes, many different sizes and shapes, and I've got to say, probably the most important consideration when it comes to choosing a softbox is the size. Okay, and size matters when it comes to softboxes, depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Now, I always say it, and lots of other people say this too, the bigger the better. When it comes to light sources for portraiture and for other things where you want to be able to really control the look of the light, especially when it comes to portraiture, where you want sort of a flattering light, something that's not too harsh. And what that means is you want something that is going to give you a nice smooth range in the transition from light to shadow. Harsh light is a very short and abrupt change from light to shadow. With softer light, you've got a nice wide transition of where the light is all the way to where your darkest areas are. And so in order to get that wide transition, lots of times you want a larger light source so that the area that's illuminating the main part of your subject's face is one thing, but then you've got areas of the softbox that are kind of filling in other parts of the face where you normally have really dark shadows, and they kind of fill that in and soften the transition. So yeah, bigger is better, but you only need a softbox with a surface area on the front that's as large as you need to cover your subject and fill in those shadows. And when we say bigger is better, remember that we're talking about the relative size of the light in relation to your subject. Of course, a light that's say 2 foot by 2 foot square, right up against your subject is going to be relatively large, in relation to their head. But you move that light farther away, it's going to look smaller and smaller visually as it moves away, and you're going to get less, coverage this way because it's only going to be able to hit a certain area of your subject. It's not going to be kind of wrapping around. So as that relatively large light moves away to some distance, it's going to be relatively smaller. Smaller light, more contrast. Up close, it becomes a larger light, less contrast. And while we're talking about that, the 2 foot by 2 foot square light should be probably no farther away than 2 feet from your subject's face. That's a general rule. If the light is like 3 feet wide, then you want that light no more than 3 feet away from your subject's face. Now, a 36-inch softbox like this one branded as Glow, it's the Easy Lock. I use this a lot. This is going to give you excellent soft light coverage up to about 3 feet away. If you're using a softbox with rectangular dimensions, you can get creative by using more light coverage in one direction and more light drop off in another. So if you're looking for a good head and shoulder softbox, I'd suggest something really no smaller than about 36 inches wide in the longest dimension. And if it's a round softbox, like an octabox, 36 inches around. Now remember, avoid a softbox that's too large for your purposes. You might say, yeah, I just want to get the biggest softbox I can get. No, not necessarily, because if you're going to be working in a normal sized room, ceilings only go up to like 8 or 9 feet, right? So if you get this really huge softbox and you need to position it, slightly above you need most of that light, that softbox positioned slightly above the subject's head. If it's just this huge softbox, you're not going to be able to get it up high enough, and so you're going to have to move the softbox down. And depending on where your subject is, especially if they're standing, a lot of the light from the softbox is going to be coming from underneath, and you're going to get that monster lighting. You don't want that. I've got a video that covers that whole concept, and I'm going to link to it here. Okay, now I think that's the most important thing to consider, when it comes to softbox and quality of light. Another thing to consider, though, is ease of use, especially when it comes to being able to transport your light. If you're not going to just use it in one location all the time, like in your home or in a studio, if you're going to be moving it around, if you're going to go to different locations, you want something that's easy to, set up and take down. Now, another thing to consider quickly is I would recommend that you get a softbox that allows the light source to be mounted outside the softbox. You don't want something, usually you don't want something where the light or your flash is positioned and mounted inside of it, because then you're going to have some other challenges having to do with, adjusting the angle like this and that. That's another thing I had a challenge with a pretty good softbox called the Apollo Orb, and I did a video on that too, and you can check that out at the link that I'm providing for that one. You might be thinking, hey Ed, what should I get? Should I get a round softbox? Should I get a rectangular or square shaped one? The thing is, it really doesn't, it all depends on what you want to do. Now remember, the light, the reflection off of your softbox is going to show up usually with portraiture, it's going to show up in your subject's catch lights. So a round softbox is going to usually give you a pretty distinct round reflection in your subject's eyes and the catch lights. In a rectangular or square shaped one, you're going to notice that it's that shape. Now, me, I like either one. The shape of the light and the catch lights, it doesn't really bother me that much. That's not really a big deal for me. And finally, think about contrast. There are all different styles of softbox. Okay, there are parabolics. There are some that'll give you the quality of more of a beauty dish. So they come in all different styles. With some you can attach grids to the front, which can be very useful. So that's something that you really want to consider. Does your softbox allow you to do things to where you can adjust the contrast and quality of light? Again, what to avoid in a softbox? I think anything that's hard to set up and tear down. You really don't want to have to deal with all of that when you're working on location. You want a softbox probably that does not mount the light inside the softbox. The light's mounted outside of the softbox. It'll give you a lot more options as far as positioning. You don't want something too aggressively large, especially if you're working indoors and you don't have a high ceiling to work with. And as far as shape goes, I really do think it's all up to you. It doesn't matter. There's lots of things you can do with really long rectangular softboxes, like strip lights. There's another video I've got, and I'm going to link to that too, where somewhere in the video I talk about how you can use strip lights as your key light for a portrait. Anyway guys, that's about all I've got for you today. Some little tips on what to look for and what to avoid for maybe your first purchase of a softbox. I hope that these helped. If they did, please go ahead and subscribe and like this video and leave me a comment. I love reading your comments. I guess that's all I've got for you today, guys. See you next time.